you generally think, really, it couldn't have been you that was part of the success. It wasn't down to me, it was the team. And if you hear these sorts of things, you might notice sometimes that somebody that you think is really successful, when they're talking about things, these things come out, and you think, well, that's strange, because I know you're really good at what you do, but they somehow can't quite connect it to their own skills. Or the other classic one, which comes out a lot, is that somebody doesn't believe they should be where they are, or they're a fraud. So this comes out, you might see it in somebody that's landed a new job, and they just are like, oh my God, I'm going to be found out. Everyone knows I can't do this. I'm just faking it. I've got no idea what I'm doing. Or it means that sometimes you don't believe that you deserve the success you've got. So in terms of how this might come out in your head, or how you might hear other people talking about it, is, I can't do this. I'm going to get found out. Everyone else is so much better than me. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm terrible at this, and everyone knows. Classic kind of negative self-talk, but often if it's in your own head, you don't see it when other people are experiencing it. And that's a classic case of, everyone else knows what they're doing. Everyone else is much better than me. I'm pretty sure if you could have a little look inside their head, a lot of the same things would be going on, but we always think it's just us. The really interesting thing that has been discovered about this is, I think quite often we think that it's likely that women experience it more than men. Well, actually, studies have shown that men and women experience it about equally. It just might be different how they manage it. So women are possibly more likely to talk about how they're actually thinking and feeling, whereas men will just say, no, I'm fine, whilst thinking I'm a fraud, I don't know what I'm doing. But also women may let it hold them back a bit more from doing things, whereas men will kind of plough on regardless sometimes, even though they are feeling these things. But the experience is about equal. And then it's not something that necessarily happens all the time. So it might just be a certain task where you feel this, particularly if you're going outside of your comfort zone. So a classic example of this is, most people don't like public speaking. And that's where you would really feel the exaggerated effects of this, like, oh my God, I'm going to forget everything. I'm no good at this. Everyone knows. What have I got to say that anyone else would want to listen to? All that sort of talk. It might be a certain situation. It might be a new role that you've got yourself into. So if you're in a new job that is either a promotion or slightly outside your comfort zone, it might be that you have started your own business. And so all of this is a bit outside your comfort zone. And so a lot of these things are coming up for you. Or there might be certain triggers to it. There might be a certain person that makes you feel absolutely awful. And it can also be down to cultural situations. It might be somewhere where you are feeling that you are different to everyone else. So for me, classic example of this, I've been on at least 3 different senior leadership teams where there are about 10 to 15 men and I'm the only woman. So naturally there is something there that can make you feel like you are the imposter. Real or imagined, you know, there's some very real causes of this. And it might be, for example, if you're a creative person and you were walking into a room of investors or business people, you might already have something that's making you feel a little bit uncomfortable. So there's some very real reasons for it. It's just very good to be aware for you, what are those tasks, those situations, or what are those triggers, so that you can begin to prepare for them. Expect it to crop up for you. Don't hope it doesn't happen. Expect that your imposter might tap you on the shoulder and make you start feeling uncomfortable, but have some techniques to manage it. So what is it not? Okay, it sounds pretty serious because it's called imposter syndrome. It's a very bad name for it. It's not a psychological disorder. You are not there is not anything wrong with you at all if you're suffering from imposter syndrome, and you can't catch it. It's not uncommon. It's really, really common. And actually, the more you talk about it, the more you realise that almost everyone at some point in their life has felt it. It is not impossible to overcome. You'll see lots of examples of people that have done extremely well in their lives, extremely high achievers. Most of them have either overcome their imposter syndrome or just learned to live with it, and they still regularly feel it. I'm moving your faces around because they're covering my screen, in case you're wondering. It's not only for introverts. It's quite common if you're an introvert with imposter syndrome that you think that somebody who's extroverted and talks a lot and seems confident isn't experiencing it. They absolutely are. They just are able. This is often, you might see somebody who's extroverted but feeling imposter syndrome can't stop talking. That can be how it manifests itself. I probably fall into that category more than not. So if you are an introvert, a good way to spot it in somebody different to you is don't always assume that because they're speaking up and talking, they're not feeling it. They often will say everything in their head, hoping that something they say is right. It's not the same for everyone who experiences it. So there's very different ways that it will occur to you, and that can change depending on the situation. It's not all bad, and I will come on to that in case you're wondering how it could possibly be a good thing. It's not visible to everyone else. And this is a classic. The feeling of being a fraud and that you're going to be found out, you tend to be thinking everyone knows what you're thinking. They can see straight through you. They know that you're not confident. They know that you're thinking you don't know what they're doing. And it's not that case at all. There might be some certain things that crop up. You might sometimes be nervous in a situation, but they will probably think you're slightly nervous. They won't be thinking, ha, caught you, you imposter. It's not only for women, said before, and it's not career limiting. And it is not only you, and it is certainly not a weakness. And that last one, which I can't see but your faces. The one thing it is not. So there's a slight tendency sometimes that if people receive a compliment like, oh, you did really well in that, imposter syndrome is not going, oh, me? Oh no, I'm terrible. That's not what we're talking about. It is that genuine, oh God, me? No, that wasn't me. It's not the fake modesty. So just one to clarify on that. Okay, so negative manifestations. So this is where it can really be causing you a problem. And this tends to fall into sort of three categories, if you like. So there's the ones that are kind of negative, they're a self-talk and they might hold you back. So this is where you are putting yourself down. So you're self-deprecating. It's that classic if somebody says to you, oh, I really like your outfit. Oh, this. Oh, I just threw this on. Oh, it was cheap. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Kind of be aware of stopping your own talk on that or deflecting praise. Just be aware if you have a tendency to do that. It can be that you are it's the devil on your shoulder. It's the negative self-talk. You're going to fail, you're no good at this. And particularly when your brain then finds of reasons and experiences and references of why you're going to fail. So this might be, oh, last time you spoke in public, you got all nervous, you went red. And so your own brain and your own thoughts are finding references to back up the negative self-talk. So again, that's quite that's one you really want to be aware of and try and change and create some positive self-talk. So if you hear that devil on your shoulder talking, it's a good one to try and interrupt. It can be where you focus on your flaws, not your strengths. So rather than saying I'm creative and have an artistic mind, you might say I'm disorganized and untidy, for example. So be aware of that. And it might be particular situations or tasks absolutely fill you with dread and you avoid doing them as much as you possibly can. The good news with those is because they're all quite negative, they're quite easy to spot. And if something is easy to spot, you can begin to understand, be aware of when it appears for you and to start thinking about ways you can overcome it. But there are some sneaky ones as well. So A really interesting one you see quite a lot when somebody is feeling imposter syndrome is that they're over preparing. This is where somebody has got every detail, they're working away, they're up late at night preparing every possible question that might be answered. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, it's good to be prepared, but when it might be your mental health at risk, your sleep, that sort of thing, it's just one to be aware of. And it's not necessarily one that you would see as a negative, so just watch out for that one. My absolute favourite is procrastinating, and this can take many forms. So it might be that you are really, really busy doing lots of stuff that's really, really important because actually you're putting off doing the thing that you're worried about. So it might be making a call to somebody that you want to buy your product, but before you do that, you're going to have every single question they could possibly ask you done. You just need to clean out your oven, and whilst you're there, you need to reorganize every single thing in your office. If you catch yourself being extremely busy doing stuff, but you're not doing that one scary thing, it could be avoidance and procrastination. Finding reasons not to do something, this is a very good one with imposter syndrome, because you don't want to put yourself out of your comfort zone. You don't want to go into harm's way. So you find a million very, very sensible and good reasons not to do something. And then the other one might be that you defer to other people or you don't speak up. So this is in green because you could really see that as a positive thing. Well, of course, if I'm in a meeting with my boss or if I'm in a meeting with somebody senior, well, I'm just going to defer to them. I'm going to ask them, and I shouldn't speak up and I should be quiet. Well, actually, that's probably your imposter syndrome telling you that you aren't good enough to speak up. And actually, if you're in that meeting, you're probably there because people want you to participate. So beware of the ones that can sneak in as looking like something else, but actually it's always that your imposter syndrome is creeping up on you.
It seems like with those ones, Jane, everyone has agreed in the chat that they can maybe have done a few of those. So I think everybody is feeling in agreement there.
Yes, and that's why they're the ones to watch out for, because they can disguise themselves as something else, particularly being busy. I'm so busy. Oh no, if you're meant to speak to you the next month, why haven't you done what you said that one? Oh, well, because I did first. Great, but what was the most important thing you needed to do? The big scary one that you didn't do. Okay, the other kind of category are really, I suppose, about putting yourself forward for things. And this is where the difference between men and women and how they how I guess the actions they take can really be different. So not applying for a job or promotion is an absolute classic. So you've probably heard the stats bandied about, and I should really have a source of where they're from. But it's something like if a woman sees the criteria for a job, she'll look at 10 different criteria and go, oh my God, I can only do 8 out of 10. I can't do all of them. I couldn't possibly apply. Whereas a man will look at the same criteria and go, oh, I can do 5 out of 10. Hey, it's mine, and apply. There's slight exaggerations there, but the stats in terms of the amount of criteria women feel they need to have to apply for a job or a promotion tend to be far more than a man. This can also look like low performance reviews of yourself. So this might not apply if you're an entrepreneur at the moment, although because you're probably not giving yourself an annual performance review, but I'm sure you're still thinking about how you're doing. And what this will tend to look like is other people will be telling you you're doing really brilliantly. Your sales are this, you've done that, you're really performing well. And you are marking yourself on those criteria much, much lower. Or if you are doing well, you're finding a reason that it wasn't you. Oh, well, it was just lucky, or because of someone else, or it wasn't really me. And this is one to look out for if you're managing people as well, is just why is somebody that you think is a high achiever and doing really well, why are they consistently rating themselves lower? And that was quite often imposter syndrome. I'm thinking, Cressida, with your clients, you might see this cropping up when you think they've progressed really well and actually they're only focusing on what they can't do or their lack of progress, etc. Classic is not asking for a pay rise, promotion. That is very much a difference between men and women. And then not taking risks and staying in the comfort zone, which will often be about not taking on work. So a boss or a mentor or somebody might say, why don't you do this project? This will really stretch you. This will really give you some development, and you shy away from it. And that could be a bit of imposter syndrome coming out as well. Okay, so it's not all bad. So with all the horrible things it can do to you and all the things you see in yourself that you're doing, but don't panic, it's not all bad. So this is one of my favorite diagrams. The types of people who can have imposter syndrome is basically all the smart, successful people that you think have their shit together. Almost everyone has it at some point, and particularly it's very, very common in high achievers. So the good news is people that suffer from imposter syndrome tend to be hardworking. They tend to be really well prepared. They are very often high achievers, as I said before. They tend to ask lots of questions, and asking questions is a really, really good thing. And it's not something to be shy of or embarrassed of. And it's the best way to learn. People with imposter syndrome are really, I mean, the downside is they're often really super critical, but it also means you're often very self-aware, especially of your genuine gaps. And if you know where your gaps are, you can do something about them. You can either work with people that have complementary skills, or you can train yourself, or be very mindful of how that might hold you back in your business. Often people are very keen to learn and develop who are suffering from a bit of imposter syndrome, and will tend to listen to others, especially experts. And that is a great thing to do, particularly when you're running your own business. Often people will seek out different opinions and advice. And often it means that people are really courageous, because if you are feeling all these things, you've got this negative self-talk, you're scared of doing these things, and you move on and do them anyway. That takes some real bravery and courage to do that. So some simple strategies to overcome. So the classic that you will probably hear the most is fake it till you make it. And I just wanted to clarify what we mean by that by starting with don'ts. And my first would be, don't be a fake. I think we can probably see some people that are faking it in every sense and really shouldn't be where they are. So this isn't about kind of pretending you know stuff you don't, or trying to be someone you're not. So just be aware, fake it till you make it isn't quite being a Trump. Don't blag it when you don't know. This is more about faking the feeling of being successful and you know what you're doing. It's not about pretending you know stuff you don't. If you pretend to be someone you're not, you're going to be exhausted, probably miserable, and found out. So it's really important to be authentic. Don't be afraid to say you don't know. Sometimes it feels really tough to just go, I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about, or I don't know what that complicated accountancy word is you've just thrown at me. Just ask. People really don't mind if you ask. And don't beat yourself up if you're not perfect. Spoiler alert here, nobody is. Don't beat yourself up if you make mistakes. Everyone that tries to push themselves makes mistakes, and it's only people that are staying in their safe little bubbles that don't make mistakes. So the more you make, the more you're trying, the more you're pushing yourself through your comfort zone, outside your comfort zone. And don't beat yourself up if it's hard. I think sometimes we think that having your own business or having a promotion or doing something great is all supposed to be fun and joyful and wow, living the dream. Most of the time it's really, really bloody hard. And so don't beat yourself up if it's harder than you expected, and harder in different ways. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Now, I know you guys are all very good at this because you have all reached out and found help through the Kent Business Foundation and your mentors. Okay, so here's something just in terms of high achievers that you might not expect. So any guesses who might have said this? Why would anyone want to see me again in a movie? And I don't know how to act anyway, so why am I doing this? That's Meryl Streep. very famous imposter. There are still days when I wake up feeling like a fraud, not sure I should be where I am. That is Sheryl Sandberg, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Facebook and famously authored Lean In, has done lots of TED Talks and tries to empower women to have their voice and get into senior leadership positions. And she feels like a fraud. So we're in great company. And one of my favourites, the exaggerated esteem in which my life work is held makes me feel very ill at ease. I feel compared to think of myself as best, and I can't see that because my screen sharing, as a swindler. That was Albert Einstein. Okay, so the point there is high achievers often feel like imposters, and you wouldn't have a clue, would you, with people like that they are feeling like a fraud, no one wants to see them. It really is extremely common. And if you Google celebrities and imposter syndrome, you just get lists and lists and lists, and it's men and women, and it's people you would have no idea. So in terms of things you can do fake the confidence. So the bit you're faking is not that you are the best at everything, but try and fake that feeling of confidence, because that's how you then begin to actually feel it. Fake the calm, breathe. You're getting stressed out, you've got a difficult situation to get into, or you're just sitting at your desk and your mind is racing. Do take a bit of time out, do some breathing, some mindfulness, find something that works for you. But there really is not much better that you can do for yourself than remembering to breathe. Power pose. Now, there are lots of good TED Talks on this. This is a particularly good one if you are going into a situation where you're feeling like the imposter, you've got to meet a room of scary people, you've got to give a talk. I mean, for me, it's got to be the classic Wonder Woman pose, works an absolute treat. And that power pose, that could be about how you dress, what you're looking like. You know, put on your armor that's going to make you feel invincible. You see this a lot in sport. So the classic, the Williams sisters, they walk onto a tennis court looking like movie stars. They have the confidence in absolutely every respect. Borrow that sort of idea. The other one is shut up and listen. And this is maybe one more for extroverts that are feeling imposter syndrome, where you can't stop talking. Sometimes shut up and listen. And if you're in a new situation, meeting loads of people, it gives you some time. You don't have to be saying something. You can listen to the other points of view, and it will give you some time to think, to take notes, to really listen to what they've got to say. Celebrate wins. This is really, I think, key. If you're an entrepreneur or working on your own, quite often if you're in a big company, there'll be some kind of formal structure of win of the week or celebrating star of the month or something like that. It's quite important to put those little rewards into your own business as well, because otherwise you forget. And if you don't look back at what you've achieved, sometimes it always feels like you're still climbing a really high mountain. Build on what you do know. So where this comes to, of course, there's going to be gaps in your knowledge. There's going to be some things you don't feel confident at, but anchor yourself and really give yourself credibility and appreciate stuff you are good at and what you do know, and that will make you feel more confident in taking on the new stuff as well. Do identify your knowledge gaps. Identify, you can't possibly know everything, but actually if you're running your own business, there are some things you do need to know, even if you hate them, even if you don't like doing them. It might be finance, it might be pitching, you will know what they are. Think about, okay, so I don't like doing this. What level do I need to get it? Do I just need to know the basics, or do I need to become good at this? And if it's a gap currently and you can work towards overcoming it, then that takes away one of the things that you're going to be concerned about. And this is a great one for entrepreneurs. You just have to get used to feeling uncomfortable. Get used to it. Don't expect to always feel really confident and always amazing. If you're expecting that sometimes you're going to feel uncomfortable and you're going to be okay with that and you're going to live and it's all not going to be terrible, then actually it can minimize some of the fear that comes into certain situations. And also acknowledge the thoughts. If your brain is telling you all this stuff, just for me, I find it really useful to call out my imposter syndrome. So if I'm having a bad day and I'm feeling negative and you're rubbish, you don't know what you're talking about, I will go, whoa, hey imposter, you're being a real cow today. Wow, that's a special new level of insult you've just given yourself. You wouldn't say that to your friend, you wouldn't say it to a colleague, so don't let yourself say it to yourself. Does that make sense? If you start listening to what you're telling yourself sometimes, particularly the negative stuff, it's shocking how mean you can be to yourself. So acknowledge it and just go, wow, okay, nice new insult. Because as soon as you start doing that, you then begin to interrupt the pattern and also acknowledge it's just a thought, it's not actually a fact. You might be telling yourself you don't know anything. Well, hang on a minute. Well, clearly I know something, otherwise I wouldn't have achieved X, Y, Z. Start calling it out. And just remember, nobody knows everything and nobody is expecting you to know everything. Any questions on that one first, the fake it and the not faking it? No? Okay, so strategy number 2, and this is one I have used a lot and used throughout my career. So most organisations and companies of a certain size will have a board of directors. I'm sure you've all heard about boards. And on a board of directors, the whole point is you have different people who are different specialists in the areas, and they will all know a lot about the company, but they all bring different things. So this is about having your own board of directors. And the criteria for being on your board, you can make the job description as difficult as you like, but it should be people that know you well, that have your interests at heart, that will give you advice, support, challenge you, disagree with you if necessary, are honest with you, but are people that you trust. And what you want is a number of people that will fulfill different roles. So the sorts of people that this could include, and it's entirely up to you, but you might have, so the arrows, just to explain the arrows are kind of whether they are mostly, the relationship is kind of one way, them giving advice to you, or whether actually it's a real two-way relationship. So the classic one I like to start with is the cheerleader. So my cheerleader is probably my mum. And that is somebody who, you know, have a very strong mutual relationship. If I fall flat on my face and fail, she's the one that loves me no matter what, tells me I'm great, and is the feel-good factor. Do I go to her for advice on fintech startup strategies? No, I don't, because my mum does not know the first thing about a startup fintech strategy. That's where I would have, say, my former boss, who I really respect. It could be that I have a mentor that I can go to for advice. Former employees can be really good. For me, I speak a lot to former employees because they know what I'm like as a boss and as a leader, and they can really help give me advice on new roles. It might be that you find a role model in your industry. You might have an artist who has created a really successful business from what they do. Now, in that respect, you're obviously not likely to pick up the phone to, I don't want to use Kath Kidson because that shows my lack of knowledge of artists. But for example, you're not going to get her on the line, but you can emulate what she has done. You can read about her story and find out how she took a print, design business and got it into every John Lewis shop in the world. Peers are really good, so hopefully you've got a network of people through this organisation, but you obviously will talk to people. Peers, both in terms of friends, it's good to have other business people not necessarily doing what you're doing, but you can really share information. And then sometimes you might want a coach. There might be a specific problem that you're dealing with and you think, actually, I need some coaching through this, and that's a particular relationship. But the idea of this is that you have a board that kind of continues your journey with you, and you go to people, a balanced group of different people for advice at different times. Okay, moving on. So strategy number 3 is really, really important one. I always get people that do my courses create these, and I get people that have worked with my team to do these, and it's called a self-belief wall. Now, this is for the time. The idea is preferably create it when you're feeling really confident, really good about yourself, and you use it when you're not feeling really confident and good about yourself. So you start off building your wall with what I would call tangible results. So these are the things that even on your worst negative day, when you're telling yourself you're rubbish, you can't do anything, you don't know anything, these are the things that you have achieved that cannot be questioned, because you either have a piece of paper or a certificate, or it has happened, it is there. And this could be anything from school qualifications, uni, it could be certifications you've got in different areas to do with work. It could just be the fact that you got promoted in a job. It might be that you managed to run a marathon, or it could be sales results that you've had through your business or through a previous role. It's basically things that cannot be questioned because they exist. Other people can see them. And then on top of that, you add your tangible skills. So these are the things that unquestionably you are good at. Maybe you have been paid to do before. Or just that everyone always tells you, friends, family, that you can do this. So the GSD there, the polite version of that, is getting stuff done. I know I can get a lot of stuff done. I can organise stuff pretty well. Sales, I've had lots of sales roles. So even if today I'm feeling like, oh God, no one's buying anything from me, well, I must have been able to do it fairly well, because I wouldn't have been able to have 5 different jobs in sales. Public speaking, it could be that you can speak 2 different languages, or it might just be that you're really good at analytical thinking or solving problems. But basically, write down a list of all the things that you know are your skills. Hopefully by this point, you're beginning to warm yourself up a bit and not feel, you know, negative about yourself, and you've got going into the idea of this. And that's where you can put other skills. So yeah, you might not have had a job doing these, but you know you're quite good at them, you know you're quite creative. I know that when my kids come home with homework, I can help them with it, and I'm quite creative at it. I know that I can be listening to a podcast, cooking the dinner, and managing to do kids' homework. Multitasking, I'll take that. Resilience, I know that I've had an absolutely shocking year. This has happened to me, but I'm still going. Well, give yourself the credit. Note that down. It might be that you're the person that your friends always call when things are really tough for them and you've got great empathy. Or it might be that you're really courageous and you're brave and you've started a business, and hey, that takes a lot of courage. So once you've got onto the other skills, you then put in your wins. And this is the sort of thing, keep topping your wall up all the time, particularly the wins. I always say, keep a wins folder. This could be on your computer, it could be stuff you stick on your wall. If you get a bit of great client feedback, keep it, keep a note of it. If you've just won a new client or a new contract, great, make a note of it. If you've just got a PB for running, fantastic, keep that. If it's just a thank you from a colleague because you were really kind when they were having a tough time, note it all down. And the reason for having this is that when you are having those dark days, when you don't believe that you can do anything, or you're about to go into one of your trigger situations that you know is terrifying and you've got all this negative self-talk, you go and have a look at this wall and you really think about it, and you think, well, I can't be that bad because look at all this amazing stuff I've achieved, this stuff I can do, the stuff that other people tell me I can do. And it gives you a real feeling of deep down confidence that will get you through the next scary thing you're trying to do. A few tips on this is, if you don't have this stuff already, go and ask for feedback. So you could ask for feedback from, if you've done the board of directors piece, you could ask people you know, people you've worked with. You can ask them to do it anonymously through SurveyMonkey, for example. Just get a really good cross-reference. And sometimes it is worth asking the people that you're a bit unsure about for feedback, because they're the ones in your mind that you might have built up to think, oh, you're really terrible at everything. Well, sometimes asking them for feedback, they'll tell you stuff you had no idea they thought about you that is really good. So don't always be afraid of the people you're a little bit unsure of. Okay, any questions on that before I move on? Any comments? I'm sure Stuart's done this many times with with people, or some version of it.
Oh, I'm loving this, Jane. No, it's really helpful. It's really good. No, I think, yeah, we have different ways. Perhaps with a little bit of experience, but I tell you what I've struggled with. It's actually formulated into a, sort of like an organized sort of wall like you've created there.
Yeah.
I personally have a sort of a messy desk with it all on it, in my head. So, but yeah, no, it's great. No, carry on. Sorry.
No, it's great. And yeah, you'll speak to lots of people that have, either more experienced or have kind of overcome imposter syndrome. Well, just as a general, these are really good habits for business. This doesn't have to be anything to do with imposter syndrome. Most people will have a network of people they go to advice. They might not have heard it called board of directors. It doesn't really matter what you call it, but it's different people you go to, and I'm sure you guys have that. Okay, so the other strategy, which is a bit more like the fake it till you make it, is sometimes there's something you're putting off doing, you're procrastinating, you're finding lots of excuses not to do it. Sometimes it's just reframing. And this is the bit gloomy, the deathbed strategy. It's basically, okay, what are you going to look back on at the end of your life, or maybe just when you say hit the age of 40 or whatever? What are you going to wish you had done? And you have to basically, what will you regret most? Are you going to regret the things you did, even if you catastrophically failed? Or are you going to regret the things you didn't do? And I would say for most people, their regrets are usually, I wish I had done that. I wish I had done that. It's far less, I wish I hadn't done that. I'm not talking about, crimes and stuff like that, but in terms of pushing themselves outside their comfort zone or trying something new, very rarely do people go, oh, I really shouldn't have done that. I wish I'd stayed safe in my little comfort zone. So if you're stuck, sometimes reframing it this way is really helpful. Okay, so just in terms of career pivots, I've done a few myself. So I wasn't actually a banker. This is me actually in Trafalgar Square, top left hand, protesting with Oxfam about tax havens. But I have worked in the city, and I have worked in fintech, so financial technology. I had my own restaurant. You can see that sort of top right hand corner. Until February last year, I met Stuart through the fact I was director of fundraising at the Aspinall Foundation, so I was working with giraffes. And I've had a number of different roles across data and analytics and sales. And you can see there, that's when the company I was working for went onto the stock exchange in America. So I've done quite a lot of random career pivots, and including setting myself up as a consultant. So tends to be the thing to consider when moving from what you're doing to what you're doing next, whether that's launching your own business or changing career, is kind of how you think of the gap between where you are now, where you want to be, and what could happen in between. So the thing you tend to be asking yourself is, should I stay? Oh, there's too much to lose. I'm comfortable knowing where I am. What if I fail? Or you might be thinking, oh, I'll see what comes my way. I'll just stay here and see what happens. Or a lot of the time when people actually look to change is actually it's too painful where I am. That pain could be boredom. It could be not enough money. It could be a number of different reasons. It could be that I don't like working in an environment for toxic people, you name it. In terms of should I go and looking at where you're going, there's so much to win. It could be, it's got to be better than here, the grass is always greener. It might be, you might be thinking, oh God, it's too risky here. There's too many unknowns and what ifs. Or it could be, well, I want to be in control of my destiny, so that's why I'm going to make the leap. The reasons people don't, or the things they're often worried about, the crocodile of failure, if you like, the alligator of failure. Pride, what if I fail? What will people think? Is often a big barrier. People might worry about their self-esteem if they fail, their reputation, failing, humiliation, the pain of it all, or it might be as straightforward as I cannot afford to fail because I can't afford it financially. On the other hand, you might be somebody that thinks of the unicorns, the excitement. Even if I fail, well, it's going to be exciting. It'll be a great experience. I will really grow whether I fail or succeed. It could be a stepping stone into something completely different, and whatever happens, I will learn. So knowing kind of why you are moving from one place to the other, and what you think about the perceived failure, what might happen, it's really useful to know in terms of how best to make that transition. So this is my favourite approach. I would call it the flying leap. It's pretty high risk, but you fail fast, you learn fast. It can be high pain if you get it wrong, but you get there quicker. Or maybe you don't get there at all, but you learn pretty quickly. So you take a flying leap and it ends well. You end up where you want to be. You might end up almost there, but not quite, but there's a bit of scrambling to do before you get there. Or you might end up in the jaws of whatever you've imagined your alligator to be. You could feel the humiliation, the fear. Now, for me, because my fear of failure is not very strong, I tend to take positives out of failure. I'm okay with the flying leap, because as long as I can get through it financially, I'm not worried about humiliation or my reputation, because generally I think, well, actually it's learning, and it's more important to me that I'm doing this thing than not doing it. Not everyone, of course, takes the flying leap, and I'm not recommending it. If you think about a rope bridge to get from A to B, this is where it's kind of medium risk. So some risks have removed. You've probably got a really good support network in place. You might be moving fairly fast, but you've kind of spent a bit more time thinking about it, thinking about the risks, thinking about the things you need to do before you start doing anything. So yes, it could still fail, but it's probably less risky than just ripping it off and moving to your new career in a couple of months without really worrying too much about anything. Stepping stones is how a lot of people would transition careers. So this is a lot lower risk. So you're working out each step between where you are now and where you want to be, and it enables you to reevaluate each step. So what this looks like in reality, if you were wanting to move into a totally new industry, you might decide to do the same job that you're doing now at a new company, or you might go for a different job but in the same company, and therefore you're taking away some of the risk of everything being new at the same time. If you're starting your own business, you might do it as a side hustle first until you're really confident you know what you're doing, or the money's coming in that you can transition across. The downside is it can just take you a bit more time to get where it is that you're wanting to go in a series of steps. The fourth bridge. This comes a lot into how you are as a personality, but it might also show that there's a lot of imposter syndrome going on. So this is very low risk, but could take you years. There's virtually no risk. So this is where somebody will decide they're in one type of career and they want to go into a different kind of career. And whether they are required to have qualifications or not, they will take every single course and qualification going that could take them years, cost a lot of money. So if you're moving from the business world into sustainability, you would get a master's degree in sustainability before you would even try to work in that world, because the idea of not knowing everything and not being prepared is just a horrific thought for you. You might take a number of different roles to gain the experience for you to do a different role. So for me, going from the business world into charity sector, rather than going straight in as director of fundraising, I would have given up my career and started right at the bottom of the charity sector to work up like anyone else would. You've probably got an extremely strong support network. You may have joined professional organisations, paid money for membership, gone on lots of courses. You've spent thousands and thousands of pounds getting there, but the advantage is you probably do go in at a very high paid level because you've got a master's in this and that and the other. So it's quite useful to understand your differences. And then this might be one for you entrepreneurs, which I would call the float down the river. And this is for people that have an entirely different concept of risk. So first of all, they're not necessarily trying to get to this other place, the other side. They don't really know where they want to go, and they don't mind not knowing. Their idea of success is completely different. It's probably not about status or money. And the attitude to failure is, well, there is no failure, there is only learning. And I would call this kind of, you're not even trying to get to the other side, you just jump in and float wherever the river takes you. And you're pretty chilled out about it. And it's not more or less successful than any other type of direction. It's just an entirely different attitude. And sometimes entrepreneurs may be in that bracket, but there's quite a lot of hard work being an entrepreneur, as you guys all know. So I'd suggest this is probably not this sort of person, but could be. So with that, those scenarios are really just to recognize in yourself your attitude to risk, how clear you need to be and want to be and where it is you're going, because then you can get the right kind of support in place and think about things in the right way to get you there. And this is where imposter syndrome may show up in various different things. So if you are finding that you are planning and studying and doing all this before making the move, it's worth asking yourself, is this procrastination, or do I actually need to do all this preparation? And I'm not saying don't be prepared. I'm just kind of highlighting that sometimes it's it could be something else coming out, not that you actually need to be doing all of that stuff. So my kind of takeouts, things to think about in the context of, oh, sorry, up a slide. Things to think about are, do you experience imposter syndrome? It sounds like most of you do, or do your team, or it could be clients or people you work with. What are the triggers and how do you react to them so that you can be aware of strategies to overcome your triggers next time? What strategies can you use? Are you pivoting career? Do you need a bridge? What sort of bridge do you need? How can you build it, and who can help you with it? Any questions, any thoughts, any reflections? Stuart's gone off to build a bridge. No. Okay. So final slide. If you reflect that, I'd definitely say go and try out some of these strategies for yourself. If you do need some more help at any time, I do a follow-up short course on overcoming imposter syndrome, which really goes into a bit more of the psychology. So it covers changing how you think and feel about things, particularly when that imposter shows up, what the sorts of things you are thinking, how you feel about it, and how to really step in and change that whole process. It covers massive and passive action. You may have kind of seen some of this coming through already, but massive action is where you are really busy doing the scary stuff that takes you towards your goals and where you want to be. And passive action is when you're keeping really, really busy to avoid doing the stuff that you're really scared of doing, and it doesn't tend to get you anywhere. It also covers managing failure and what other people think. So often our fear of failure can quite often be tied up with, oh, but what will everyone think of me? What if people think I'm a failure, etc. They're not always the same thing, but we tackle how to think about failure and how to manage this bit about what other people think. As Cressida mentioned, for her, when you are striking out and doing something new, what other people think is obviously going to come up a lot for you. And then it covers goal setting and action plans, and how to set really strong goals and the action plans to get you there and hold yourself accountable. So if anyone feels like they want a bit more help, I can send more details about that on my short course. And that's all I have for now. So, I need to learn how to use mouse. Any thoughts? Anything you want to say? Any